Woo! It's just me, myself, and I. Ba 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 ba. Just been listening to that song, kind of nonstop for the last day or so. Sometimes those songs that you heard a long time ago on the radio or just somewhere in your life and you liked it, but then you, I don't know, didn't have a playlist at the time or you didn't add it to your playlist at the time. Now you hear it again and it's just addicting as hell. That's that song to me right now. Me, Myself, and I by G-Eazy and Beba Rexha. Nice, nice, nice. Sticking in my head rent free for today, November 9th, 2022. So, yeah, what am I going to talk about today? I don't know. There's this show that I really love back in the day. It's kind of changed now, but this used to be my thing. The podcast I always watched when it came out. That was the Richard Lewis Show. And this was back in like 2017, 2018, 2019 when it was, I think, at its prime. Then eventually he changed it back to I Hate It Here, which was in essence still the same show, but it just didn't have the same gravitas. Like the person itself changed, and he just wasn't. The show itself wasn't as entertaining. So, but back then, um, that was the show, and I don't know why I'm bringing it up because I just realized the thing that I was trying to connect the show with wasn't even part of that show. It was actually part of a different show. So never mind. That's just a cool nugget of information you're gonna get today. But anyway, the thing I was trying to say is there was another show that he did, and in that show they have a segment called Petty Grievances, which basically was just him and his co-host talking about the things that annoyed them, the petty grievances that they had. So maybe that's just gonna be a thing that I will add into this because it's always easier to talk about negative things um, than positive things because the negative things just live rent free in your head and they're what dominate your line of thinking usually, which healthy or not, that just is usually what happens. So, what are the petty grievances that I have today? Well, number one is people not responding to their emails in a timely manner, especially people whose whole job, I would assume, is responding to emails of their people that they work with. What am I talking about? I'm talking about university recruiters. And these people, there was somebody that was supposed to be a point of contact for me at this company that I'm applying to, and they are not responding to me. I sent them an email 5 days ago over the weekend. Today is a Wednesday, so I sent this to them on a Friday, and it was early on a Friday, so they could have responded later in that day as well, but maybe they didn't. Okay, that's fair. And then I went all the way to Monday, and they still didn't respond. So I sent up a follow up email, just be like, hey, Bump, could I get a response on this? Come Tuesday, which was yesterday, the whole entire workday I just waited and there was no response. So clearly something was not working. And come today, I'm like, what the hell is this? As it is in the morning right now that I'm recording this. And so I've sent another bump email. And that's my petty grievance because, like, for a recruiter, is your whole job not to interface, first of all, you're acting as like a liaison, whatever the fuck that word is called, between the candidates, the recruits, and the company, which means your whole job is communication. Which means if you're not communicating with one side of that party, of that two-way street, you're literally failing half of your job. Petty grievance. Like, one of the topics I wanted to talk about was having empathy, and I am not practicing it right now because I'm basically laying into her, as it is a her. Like, basically, why is she not doing this? But I really don't know her situation. Maybe she's been having a tough time and stuff is happening, but either way, I don't know. Just from where I am right now, where I have no context, no evidence about anything else, it is a petty grievance, something that annoys me. So, just had to share that out there. hopefully, if I can talk about it here, get it out of my system, it won't just live in my heart for the rest of the day, as that would be quite annoying and really counterproductive. I think part of the reason why it actually became such a thing in my mind is because this company that I'm applying to is actually a place I do want to go. So I really do want to get a response, especially since I have competing offers that are going to expire within a certain amount of time. So that's why I want to know this result before the other offers expire so I can actually have that safety of being able to decide between two different things. And if that doesn't happen, then I will just be a sad cookie. And I guess that is just how life sometimes happens, but I think this is, not was, completely avoidable. They just check their email and respond. So, petty grievances aside, that was that. What am I talking about today? Well, I guess I could be topical and talk about some stuff that is related with this. I guess I'll do that. Yeah. So, what am I talking about today? What I'm talking about today is the TC pursuit that I've fallen into. This mindset of trying to chase for the most amount of money, the highest TC, which is total compensation, in the job hunting that I'm doing. Right, I'm looking for a job, and I've unfortunately, it's not really a bad thing, but I think it's a bad thing for me myself. Like, I don't shame other people for doing this because people have different situations, right? And they may have different goals in life. But for me, as I am me, I'm aware of what my own situation is, what my own goals are. So, following this TC pursuit, I'm like, there is no good reason for me to do this. I don't believe I have any goals or anything that justifies this, where it justifies like the pros of this and the cons, which is hating myself for some of the thoughts that it brings. It just puts me in a place that I don't like. I don't like where I am right now, and I don't like the mindset that I have. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let me first give some context about what TC Pursuit is. So, right now, audience member, your old friend here is applying for jobs as a new graduate from university. I'm in my senior year, I'm about to graduate at the end of May next year. And following that, I need a job, right? I want to work at a software engineering in a software engineering role at a company and basically make some money, right? As most people do when they graduate college. As I'm applying to jobs in the software engineering realm, in this tech industry that I'm applying to, a big thing that dominates people's mindsets and people's criteria when they're applying to jobs is the total compensation that the job provides. And I think this is really something that is across every industry. I mean, of course, the whole point of having a job is doing work and then in exchange getting paid, right? So the part that you're receiving, which is the getting paid part, is pretty important. Like the amount that you're getting paid, like of course, right? I think however, the thing that I think might be a little bit different about the software engineering field, tech industry, is that this will really min max their TC, right? And it comes to the point where it's quite a competitive game, and um, since salaries and total compensation in general, I feel, are somewhat inflated in this, people have really high total compensations, TCs, when they get hired to things, especially at least for on the higher end of the spectrum. When you're applying to like bigger companies, pay more, right? And what is the result of this? The result of this is that with the abundance of online forums and being able to talk among other people in the industry and people talking about their total compensation, the presence of these very high TCs make it so that people that have lower TCs kind of feel like, man, I'm missing out and I feel like I should be doing better for myself. I should be looking for opportunities that give me this higher TC that this other person has. And in a way, this is a good thing, right? And this is what most people justify. And I honestly agree as well, because it is a good thing. Being able to know that other people like you are making more money than you will motivate you and also inform you of the fact that there are companies that are willing to pay this much and also give you the power to perhaps negotiate when you're like deciding between offers or maybe within your even current company, being able to say like, I know a coworker or a friend maybe works at a different company or even the same company who's making more than me and I want to renegotiate, right? If you want me to stay here or if you want me to join here, you got to pay me more. And in that sense, having this widespread information about people's TCs is very good. And I totally agree with that. What is negative for me? And I want to stress it's for me because this is different for everybody. A lot of people can just use this as motivation, right? And I think I use it as motivation as well to try and get the best TC possible. But for me, I feel like this has turned into a single minded game where I'm just like deciding between job A and job B. I want the most money. And that is all that is on my mind. And I think the part that is really toxic, it consumes my life to the point where even when I'm not thinking about, when I don't have to think about job application, deciding between offers, I'm still thinking about, oh, I wish I could make more money. And I think the really toxic part is when you then know and you talk with friends like, oh, where are you going to work after graduation? Like, this is a normal conversation topic, talking about their post grad plans, where they're going to be, what company they're going to work at. At some point, usually I wouldn't talk about the TC, but just the fact that you're talking about post grad plans, right? Oftentimes you're going to share what company you're at. And if you share what company with that you're at, as I said, with this large abundance and resource of forums online and just websites that are dedicated to sharing this TC information of different companies, what I've found myself doing is once I know like a friend is working on a specific company, I immediately will go to these online resources, search up the company, and be like, is that friend, how much is that friend making? And are they making more than me? And that is just such, I think, a toxic mindset to have because this is the same kind of mindset you have when this is the same mindset I had when I was really actively using Instagram and other social medias, which is why I try and like step back from that. And that's FOMO, just the fear of missing out. Except this time, what you're missing out is not experiences, it's money. And you fall into it's the same trap as that FOMO with experiences that you see on social media. You feel like you're missing out and you get jealous. And that is something that I sometimes feel like I've fallen into. I hear that a friend is starting work at somewhere, and I do this kind of destructive cycle where I like look up, oh, if you work here, what is usually like the offer that you get for new grads, right? And then I'll be like, wow, that's a lot of money. And then part of me, the good part of me, the part that I want to keep, is happy for them, right? And I think that is something that I am. I am happy for them. I want my friends to be successful and I want them to all do well. And then there's a toxic part of me that is just like, I'm jealous because they're making more than me. Or the even worse toxic part of me, I think, is the part of me that is like, oh, I'm gonna make more than them. I feel powerful isn't the word, but I feel smug and satisfied and be like, in a very basic sense, I'm like, I get the feeling that I'm better than them. That's just so toxic, right? Because I'm not better than them. But in the sense of the TC, maybe I am better than them. And if you're talking about objectively, well, yeah, in the TC, if I'm making more money than them, the total compensation that I'm getting is more, then yeah, I am better than them in that regard. But as a person, that's not true. And I feel like this kind of comparison that I keep doing, it sours or it just gives me a sour taste in my mouth because constantly comparing yourself to others and not reaping the positive benefits from it and instead getting the negative stuff, which I said is jealousy and having these inflated sense of egos. I think that's what I was trying to say. Having this like inflated sense of who you are just because you make a little bit more money. That is what I hate. I hate it. And it's a difficult thing to do, which is why, in all honesty, how have I tried to approach and um, how have I tried to remedy this and make it so I don't feel these feelings? Well, I use the honestly, it's a approach that doesn't treat the effects. It's like a band-aid approach, right? And I did the same thing with social media and Instagram and other social media platforms like Snapchat, right? How do you deal with FOMO? The real way to deal with it is to fix your own mindset and feelings where you won't feel that FOMO, even when you're exposed to these stimuli, right? You'll be able to not have those negative feelings and instead be able to solely focus on the positive, like happy for your friends that they're doing this, that's so cool, and not feel the jealousy associated. Happy for your friends that they found this great job and not feel um, any sense of inflated ego or deflated ego knowing that they make less or more than you. That would be the healthy way, and I think the correct way to approach this. What have I done instead? Well, I'll give the example of what I did with when I started feeling FOMO with Instagram and Snapchat. And just in general, like it's not even associated just with social media, it's just hearing your friends talk about stuff that they did and you're like, I wasn't there or I wasn't invited. How did I fix that? By cutting off those avenues so I wouldn't have to hear it. So instead of really treating myself, fixing the problem within myself, what I did was just hide the problem. And in the sense of social media, that was either deactivating my Instagram or just not going on it like ever. For Snapchat, that was just completely deleting the Snapchat app and not using it ever again. That was what I did to avoid the problem. And when friends started talking about things, what I would do is basically just try and tune them out and not really listen to it. Like listen to it, but then try not and internalize it because I knew if I internalized it and really thought about it, I'd feel those negative feelings. And another preventative measure, especially with the one where it's friends talking about it, is you try and make it so that this conversation topic comes up, right? You never ask them, what did you do? So then you won't get hurt when they tell you and you'll FOMO. Now, the thing is, I don't actually really do that with the in-person talking one because that would just be impossible. Or the in-person talking one about things that they did because then you literally have nothing to talk about with people. And I think like asking people what they did for fun on certain times That's just like a necessity for basic conversation. So it's unavoidable, right? So then the way that I try and avoid it is by always focusing on them, right? And then never having to talk about myself. So how does that hide the problem, right? Well, in that sense, I'm learning all about them, but then I never have to feel the embarrassment of sharing stuff myself and then when I'm sharing stuff myself, I'll inevitably be like, "Oh, wow, I did nothing." And then I'll myself feel like a loser because I feel like I'm telling this person that I did nothing and I'm thinking that they're going to think of me as a loser for really not doing anything as cool as they did. So that's how I hide it. So how does this apply to this original topic I was talking about, the TC pursuit? How do I hide the problem instead of actually addressing it? The way I did that is by never asking people about their postgrad plans, right? If I can avoid that conversation topic, then it will never come up. And then I'll never have to talk about it myself either. Because part of the most toxic thing, or the thing that makes me feel the worst and activates these feelings, when you have to talk about it yourself. And then that's when you are directly, maybe not directly, but as soon as you bring it up yourself, right? One person's brought it up, and then now you brought up your experience of the same thing. So there's two different experiences of the same category, the same genre. So inevitably, even if you're not directly comparing, there is an indirect comparison that always happens when there's two things of the same type being put out. You're gonna, in your mind, do some kind of indirect comparison, even if you don't want to. You're gonna be like, oh, okay, this person makes this much, I make this much. Even if I don't want to, I'm gonna internally, unconsciously compare those two and be like, oh, they make more than me, or oh, they make less than me. So, well, guess what? You can avoid that if you just never bring it up, right? Then when there's only one data point, I guess you still internally compare, but the thing is, if you never bring it up, there's usually going to be no data points because unless they bring it up themselves, in which you can't really change or control that, right? You can't change or control what other people bring up because, I mean, they're themselves, they can talk about whatever they want. So I can only control what I can do. So if I control what I do and never bring it up, then all the risk is on them bringing it up. And oftentimes, probably they won't do that, right? Maybe they're feeling the same exact thing as I am. Maybe this is a common coping technique that lots of people do. And in that sense, we're all playing the same game and we're all trying to make the same correct moves. And the same correct moves that we're doing is basically that we're not starting this game. We're not starting the conversation about this. And in that sense, we never have to talk about it, and then we never have to think about this comparison. And then in turn, we don't have these toxic thoughts. So, why do I think this is an unhealthy way to go about it? Well, as I said, talking about it has its upsides, right? You get to know the state of your other people that are in the same boat as you, working in the same industry and the same types of jobs. And from that information, you can better yourself, right? That's the pros of it. And I think it's always good. You can eliminate the cons and only have the pros. Why would you not do that? And the cons are directly just what I was talking about, these toxic thoughts that you have, these comparisons that you do that either inflate or deflate your ego. So if you can avoid those, well, why wouldn't you? Like, I mean, that's like the whole point, right? Being able to just have the pros and not the cons. So that's my argument for why I have these feelings about why I think what I'm doing is not healthy and why I need to change. The thing is, this is a really tough thing to change, right? Because I'm well aware of this. I was well aware of this with FOMO. in terms of experiences, right? Talking with other people about what they did and seeing it on social media. And it is so hard for yourself to just tell yourself, don't think negative thoughts. It's not something you can just tell your mind to do, right? A lot of actions, like physical actions, you can tell yourself not to do it. You can tell yourself, when you're talking with this person, don't say this. Have a friendly demeanor. Don't bring up these things that might make them upset. And be a good friend, right? These are all very controllable actions where if you have the discipline, your mind can control your body to do the things that are necessary to be healthy, right? I don't think your mind can consciously, accurately control the thoughts that you have, because thoughts just come into your head, which mean this is not a test of discipline and self-control as the other stuff may be, where you're controlling yourself in conversation and in your interactions and in your demeanor with other people. This is a complete personality shift, and that is way harder. You have to internally change how your mind behaves, and that's not something you can just command your mind to do. That's something that requires exercise and time. And the thing is, what makes it hard, right? You can do this if you know what are the steps that have to be taken to accomplish this. Thing is, I don't know what are the steps to do, right? The steps I think of are like, I need to tell my mind to not think these thoughts and only focus on the positives. Okay, it's well and dandy to tell your mind to think these thoughts to your mind, but your mind isn't like some input output machine that just takes that and then be like, oh, okay, well, we'll stop doing that. No, your mind's just gonna continuously do that. And honestly, maybe it's not always a bad thing that it does that, because your mind can't always be positive, right? It's all about balance, having a positive and negative. So it's, in that sense, I feel like it's impossible to actually completely avoid these thoughts, right? So in that case, we're in a dilemma. There is no way, I'm listening here, to fix the issue. Okay? There's no way to fix the issue. So what do? We just let the issue just fester here. We just let it like control us. We just let it dominate how we think, and we just resort to this band-aid fix instead. No, I think as this approach that I listed is also an all or nothing approach, where you are, again, it's in the same vein of what I said with the band aid approach. Except this time, instead of externally putting a band aid, you are internally putting a band aid on just restricting all negative thoughts. The right healthy approach, I think, is allowing these negative thoughts to be there, but not having them dominate you, being able to shake them off and move on from it, and not have them be such things that they taint your perception of other people and hurt it. And honestly, I think right now it doesn't taint or hurt my perception of people really that much. I know it does a little bit, and I'll talk about how. I know that sometimes when I hear that other people are making more than me, I get jealous, right? I feel like, and oftentimes it's not just jealousy that where it's like, I feel like, oh, I feel like I'm better than them, but I'm making less. Oftentimes these people are better than me. They just are. I know that. They're like smarter than me. They are people I look up to in terms of being able to more successful in software engineering. They're just either more hardworking or more motivated. And I'm like, that makes sense that they make more than me. But sometimes it's hard to have all that context, right? And sometimes all you focus on is they make more than me. And you don't think about all the other stuff that justify it, right? So then that kind of colors how I see them, because then I'm like, when I see them, an association I have is they make more than me. And an association with that association is only the negative parts, only the jealousy or the little sinking inflation of the ego where I'm like, oh, they make more than me. Damn, I should treat them a little bit differently than if I had known that they make less than me or if I hadn't known anything at all. I feel like it unconsciously changes how I sometimes think about them. Right? And that's the part I don't like. Right? I shouldn't be thinking about other people differently just because they make more or less than me, especially not in a negative sense. Perhaps even in a positive sense. But I don't even know if I really want the positive sense. I just want them to treat them as they are, as their personalities go, right? And not have them be defined by their jobs and how much money they make, right? I just don't think like that is what I want my relationships, my friendships to be defined as. So how am I supposed to fix this? As I said, the external band-aid is never bringing it up, so then you never have to talk about it. The internal band-aid is trying to wipe all negative thoughts about it. Both of these approaches either are not helpful or are both unhelpful and or are not feasible as the internal band-aid because you can't really just wipe out all negative thoughts, right? So I think the only viable and the healthiest way to approach this is to have these negative thoughts, but be able to move on from them and not have them permeate and exist for long periods of time. And then, in essence, if they had stayed for a long time, they would then color your perception of other people. And this is really tough to do because at the state that I am right now, this is just what happens to your mind. And as I said, since this isn't an external action, these are your own perceptions you have of other people, which are influenced by thoughts, which, as I said, thoughts, you can't just stop certain thoughts that you have with discipline and like fucking bodily control, right? Your mind just does whatever it wants to do. It wanders and it brings in these thoughts that sometimes you really don't want to have. So I think the only way to solve this, as this is a strategy that works with other problems that people have as well, and sometimes I try and do it as well, is to overload yourself. Maybe overload isn't the best word, but is to step out of your comfort zone. And my comfort zone right now is I was practicing the external one, right? And I feel like I'm still going to practice it, right? Because in a way, while it's unhealthy for yourself, I can also see why it would be unhealthy for others if you actually do the opposite and bring it up, right? Because other people might be feeling the same thing. And while you want to improve yourself by doing this overexposure method, and I'll explain what the overexposure method is, other people may not be subscribed to the same thing. So, in essence, I still want to consider how I am to other people, right? I want to be nice and I want to acknowledge that perhaps other people don't want to talk about this, which is why I won't bring it up. But maybe you also have to consider maybe other people want to talk about it as well. Maybe they're willing to do this kind of exposure method. And I'm saying to deal with possibly the same toxic feelings and thoughts that they have as me. So what is this exposure method? The exposure method is talking about it way more, being exposed to it way more. Basically, everyone that you talk to, you're engaging in this conversation a lot more. You're making these comparisons a lot more. And once you've done these comparisons a lot more, now you know with all of these data points that you have, you'll have more experience dealing with it and being able to move past the negative thoughts associated with them. I think part of the reason why it's so tough right now is because I don't do it very often, right? I do the external band-aid of not ever bringing it up. So then when it does come up, it's every now and again. And then I have one data point every few times. But because it's only one data point, it's got to fill all the other times where I don't get new data points, and that kind of just dominates. And then I just can't move past it, right? You're inundated with a bunch of data points. I feel like you're going to learn how to, first of all, filter them and then move past them. Get the information, be like, oh, that's cool. Get the positive thoughts, be like, that's awesome that you're making a lot of money. That's awesome. You're going to be working there. And think the negative thoughts, right? They're going to come no matter what. You're going to feel like, oh, you make more than me, or oh, I make more than you internally. But then be able to move past it because you have experience doing this over and over again because you're exposing yourself more of these data points. And I think that is what I have to do. It's going to be hard. I don't think I'm going to be able to really do that. I feel like I'm still practicing the external method. But perhaps I will try and bring it up more. And it also helps once, like, the very worst part was when you don't even have a job, right? Because it really, really fucks with you. It really hurts you. You're like, these other people have already sorted it out, and I am still in a lower stage, an objectively lower stage where I'm still looking for a job. I can't even compare myself yet because I'm not even there yet. And it feels worse because this job searching phase is stressful as hell, right? So I do not blame myself or other people for not wanting to talk about it when they're still in the job searching phase because it just brings up bad memories. It brings up stressful memories. And it's not really memories, it's just stressful thoughts in the now of something that you haven't been able to accomplish yet. But now that I have, right, I'm in a situation where I do have job offers and I'm actually waiting on some other ones to be able to compare. I'm in that position where I can compare myself to others. And when I'm there, this is the unhealthy thing that is going. And the way to fix it, I think, is to put myself in this situation. So then I will know how to properly deal come whenever in the future it happens. So that is my thoughts on the TC pursuit and the toxic thoughts that I feel. And this is very topical because, of course, I'm in that job hunting season right now. So that's why I'm talking about it. In a couple months, we'll be all past that. I'll hopefully be either working at a place or have already accepted an offer. And it still could happen because you talk about where you are going to go. But it's going to be less and less because then you're going to know of people, oh, you're going to work here. So you're not going to be thinking about these thoughts as much. And it's just not as much in the season, right? So I think it's good that we talked about it here while it's still topical and it was fresh on my mind. Again, as these podcasts are, I'm sharing these because it's kind of like a self-motivator. Be like, I want to improve myself in this regard. Am I going to actually do it? I don't know. I might still practice the external band-aid. But perhaps, now that I've at least talked about it, I know concretely, now that I've said it out loud, what are the steps I have to take if I want to get better. So, wishing myself the best, perhaps I'll take those steps and actually get better. But we'll have to see until next time, and hopefully next time we'll have some good news. I'll have finally decided where I'll be, where I'll work, stuff like that. But until then, audience members, thank you for listening. And I will catch you on the next episode of The Mic is Hot.